Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming, and my name is Killjoy, and I am back, finally, doing the Mario Kart tracks tier list for the DLC, for the booster pass. It is out, I have played all the tracks, and now, finally, we're gonna tier list these. Obviously, this is my own opinion. Don't expect me to agree or disagree with what you have there, but I want to give some context to these tracks when I put them in these places, and we're going to go from there basically. So let's get started on it. I think these are mostly in the right order as well, so we can start from wave 1 all the way through to wave 6 and then go from there, so it should be good. Starting with Paris Promenade, the very first tour track we ever got to play on. Honestly, not the worst track in the world. Apologies, something in my eye. Not the worst track in the world, but this is a very much a C tier track. There's not a lot going on here. The theme for it being a simpler track, I give it the credit that it is a simpler track in the wave 1. If you're going through like making some of the easier tracks to start with, then fair enough. Not a bad track. Is it the best tour track? No, definitely not. But it's an okay track to start with. So Paris C track, fun theming, but that's about the only thing going for it compared to some of the other tracks in this list. Toad Circuit is our first D tier, D being the lowest tier that we have here. Utterly pointless, didn't need to be in here. You've got Paris, which is fairly straightforward. You didn't need Toad Circuit to be here as another circuit style track that's quote unquote easy, and it is very much straightforward. Mario Circuit, or the Mario Stadium, is the very first track in the game in Mario Kart 8, is already pretty straightforward. This just feels super unnecessary, and I think could have been replaced with a much better track. Choco Mountain, by the way, I have a list in front of me because I've already kind of preemptively put them in this. Choco Mountain is what I call a B tier. Now, the reason why Choco Mountain is in B tier for me is that it has lost a little bit of its original charm. The track doesn't quite feel the same, and it feels quite quick for Choco Mountain. It's one of the few N64 levels that I do like, and I think that this is a good rendition of it. But it has a slightly blandness, and some of the changes make it feel like a bit of a different track rather than the original track itself. So for me, Choco Mountain, is very much a good track, but I think some of that charm from what it was has been taken away. So there we go. Coconut Mall. This is probably this is my first like A tier track. Coconut Mall, I mean, again, this is one of those tracks that's, for the most part, pretty much been unscathed by the dumbed downingness of, like, some of the tracks in this. This feels very classic. It feels like Coconut Mall that you know and love. Admittedly, they went back and patched it to make sure the cars moved. They do a slight, like, you know, they don't go back and forth. They kind of spin out and stuff. But overall, Coconut Mall is a really solid track. It's a lot of fun, good music, and for the most part, was unscathed from its transition to this game. So first A tier track. Tokyo Blur, I don't even have to look for this one. This is a D track. This is the worst, or one of the worst, tour tracks in the entire game, simply because it is boring and there is nothing going on here. There is nothing interesting about this track whatsoever, and that's all I got to say to it. Moving on. Shroom Ridge. Where did I have this? This is another one of my A tier tracks. I really like Shroom Ridge. I think this track's really fun. It's a lot of drifting. It's a lot of good ways of practicing lines at the beginning and end of it. Really solid track, one of the few ones we've got in this. Like, I like the tracks with like real traffic, and like GameCube Mushroom Bridge and GameCube Mushroom City did not make the cut, unfortunately, so this is like the next best thing. So I'm very happy that this one got here. Sky Garden, well, I think this is a track that was kind of a bit of a letdown. I would put this in C tier. I don't really rate this track. I don't think it's that interesting. It's kind of pretty, but I don't really rate it. I think, honestly, it's an okay track, and that's about all I have to say on it. Like, doesn't even feel like the original. Looks very different. Obviously had that glow up, but it's not that interesting at all. So, Ninja Hideaway, the first S tier track, and probably one of the few quote unquote new tracks, which they're not new. They were planned for tour. And out of all of them, it's probably the best one. It's hard. Like, none of the tracks in this reach the level of hardness that this one is. Maybe some of the Rainbow Roads do. It's hard. It's creative. It's a new theme almost. There's like a lot of different ways to go. One of the best tracks to be in this pass, if not the best track. So first S tier track without a doubt. New York Minute. I think a lot of the tour tracks are going to end up in B. New York Minute is fine. I do enjoy it. I do like the theme of it, like the nighttime theme. Go through the park, go around the city, the taxis. But it's one of those levels where it's like, why have you got stationary vehicles? You've got road there for a reason. Let the vehicles move. They don't need to be stationary. And you see this with some tour tracks where their vehicles are stationary and some tour tracks where they're not. So, but it's a decent track on its own, and it is better. It's better than Paris. It's better than Tokyo. Great track for some chaos, but it's not. It doesn't reach the heights of like Coconut Mall, Shroom Ridge. It's not there. There is a really cool bit at the end of it where you kind of go underground, and I do think the tour tracks doing that kind of shake up is kind of fun, and they get more and more elaborate as they go on. And this one does a decent enough job of it, but it's good. It's not great. So there's Mario Circuit 3. Absolute personal favorite. This track got a lot of hate and a lot of shit online when it came out, and I am like, nah. This is a classic. This is one of the best classic Mario Circuit tracks. Yes, it is a bit wider. I'll give you that. It's not quite as difficult as it once was, but this is an iconic track from the first game. Mario Circuit 4, Mario Circuit 2, like even Mario Circuit 1, like they're all really good classic tracks. The fact that it got shit on as much as it did is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned, and it is better than a lot of the tracks here. It's better than it, like, what, so far better than Choco Mountain, New York Minute, Paris, Sky Garden, Toad Circuit, and Tokyo Blur. None of those tracks live up to this one. So, Mario Circuit 3, absolute banger of a track. Where did I put Calamari Desert? I put it here. This seems to be, I think for a lot of people, this is a very nostalgic pick. I think a lot of people really like this track. But for me personally, it's kind of bland. I don't mind it. I like the third lap being like, you know, going through the tunnel. That's a nice change. But this track it just doesn't do much for me. It's very much just drive around a mountain, avoid the train, and then go through the tunnel. That's about it. Waluigi Pinball. Oh my god, S tier. One of the other tracks in the game that, for the most part, has avoided the let's dumb down the track. Because this was originally in the DS game. It's in this Mario Kart 7 as well. This track is fantastic. It's bright, it's colourful, it's for the most part still very challenging. There's a few minor tweaks to it. But this is, theming wise, this is one of the best tracks that's ever graced Mario Kart. When they do stuff like this, like I would love to see it like on a snooker table. We've got this pinball table, like more real life like object. Let's drive around a garage, like, you know, we've got squeaky clean sprint coming up, which we'll get to in a bit. But like real life things like that, or like on a table, like a pinball table, awesome, love it. Sydney Sprint also. Did I put this in? Yes, I did. This is also a S tier, and probably the only S tier tour track in this entire pack. I really like this track. The music helps massively. I very much enjoy this tour track. It is my favourite tour track, and it's just, it's long. There's different sections to it. You got like down by the sort of like the beach pier part. You've got like the train in the middle with the ramps. Honestly, I just really like this track. I think the music really does put it up into S tier for me, because it's got some of the best music from any of the tour tracks, and to be fair to them, they do have some good tunes, so big fan of that. Very much enjoyed that one. So Snowland, where did I put Snowland? I think I put Snowland in B, but you know what, I really like Snowland. I'm going to put it in A. I'm going to change my mind. I think Snowland, a lot of the Game Boy Advance tracks, the ones that had the glow up, Snowland, Blue Lake, things like that, they're fun. They're a bit on the shorter side, but they're fun. This one's got the penguins, it's just got jolly music, and there's this charm to these tracks not being super complex. Like, a lot of the tour tracks are very road heavy, but this one's like the opposite, where it's like, hey, it's kind of icy, there's some tight turns, there's penguins in the way. It's not that complicated, but I just enjoyed playing on it, so it's going there. Mushroom Gorge, well, this is a very highly liked track, but it's going in C. And the reason it's going in C is that I don't mind this track. I like the theme, but I find the track itself is kind of boring. You sort of just drive over a bridge jump thing, onto some mushrooms, bounce across the mushrooms, do a big turn, come back to the start, and rinse and repeat. There's very little to this track. I mean, the main gimmick is bouncing on the mushrooms, but that's about it. It's alright. That's about all I've got to say on it. It's nothing special. It was never that great originally. There are better tracks in Wii that could be here, so. Alright, Sky High Sunday. quite possibly the worst track, if not the worst track in this entire pack. People will defend this because it's a nice looking level. It's an oval. Do you know what other level's an oval? Excite Bike. Do you know which one of those is better? Excite Bike. This track doesn't even work properly half the time. At the beginning of this track, you boost up, you go off the edge, you glide down. 9 times out of 10, well, let's say 80% of the time, or maybe 70% of the time, I might make it across. On the subsequent laps, you get more speed. You can fly across that beginning part, but the amount of times I've bumped into the land and just died, that is bad design in this. And on top of that, there are blind jumps in this as well. 2 things you should never do. I think this track is one of the worst Mario Kart tracks ever made. It is graphically fucking awful to look at. As a track, it's incredibly boring, and it doesn't even work properly. So, yeah, that's it. It's just a broken track. I think it's absolute trash, and possibly the worst Mario Kart track ever made. So, moving on. London Loop. This is definitely a B tier track as well. London Loop has great music, but it doesn't make the track actually that enjoyable. Like, it's good. It's fun. It's windy. All the laps are very different, but it's one of the most unmemorable tour tracks. Like, as someone who lives in England, like, oh, it's cool. Like, there's Big Ben. There's the bridge. There's different, the phone box. There's enough here to make this interesting enough for this to pop up and play on it, but that's about it. And the music's fun. There's nothing else here that really pushes it and makes it stand out above anything else. So, Boo Lake, that's definitely an A tier for me. We didn't get very many, hardly any. Well, we haven't got any Ghost Valleys. We haven't got some of the traditional Boo Lakes or Banshee Boardwalk stuff that that scare factor, that sort of horror vibe going on. Boo Lakes is one of the few of it, and honestly, this again is a little bit on the shorter side, but I've never even played this on the Game Boy Advance. I really like how this track is. I have nostalgia for like Ghost Valley. This gives me Ghost Valley vibes. That's why it's in A tier for me. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. Alpine Pass. Where did I put this? I think it's probably ended up like in. Ooh, I was quite harsh on it. I remember why. Alpine Pass, C tier track. One of the not one of the worst. One of the less memorable 3DS tracks. There are better tracks in the game, like Shy Guy Bazaar, stuff like that could have been pulled over. It's just a bit boring. Like, you drive around a corner into a mountain, you fire down a hill, you fly down a bit more, and you drive up a hill. I think it needs more obstacles and things. This track feels like it's been dumbified, to be honest, and I think that's part of the problem. Why I don't like it nearly as much as maybe I once did. I just don't think it's the most interesting 3DS track. There's a lot of good tracks in the 3DS game, and this was not the pick. Maple Treeway. I think I gave this a. Where do I put this one? I think I put it in B. Did I put it in B? I did put it in B. Why did I put it in B? That's a good question. I think more people like this. I think you know what? No. I think I do like this track. I think this is an A tier track. I think the reason for that is that it is a fun track to drive on. You drive down, you get shot out of the cannon, you drive up the spiral, you avoid the wigglers, and then you got the bit all the way bombing down. Yeah, actually, this is I was a bit harsh putting it in B. I think this is a lot of fun. The more I think about it, and I think maybe the music's kind of a bit never been a big fan of that, but the actual track layout is fun, and it is a bit it is kind of a tough track. It definitely feels like the track's being widened again. It could be the tour effect, or it could be the fact that there are now 12 races. But overall, this is a really solid pick from the Wii game, and probably one that people really like because of the kind of autumnal vibe and feeling for it. Berlin Byways, that's a B tier track. Another tour track that it's maybe more memorable than London Loop, but playing on it, there's nothing particularly great going on it. The best part of this track is when you see like the Berlin Wall with the womps in it. Other than that, this track just feels a little bit random. The music's kind of nuts. I kind of like that. But all in all, Berlin Byways is just. That and London blend into one for me. They don't really stand out, and I wouldn't put one above the other personally. So, Peach Gardens. Okay, so this is C tier. A lot of my friends like this track. I can see why there's nostalgia there to be had, but it's so boring. And I think again, it's another one of those tracks where it used to be a lot tighter. The track used to feel tighter. It used to be harder to drive through, but it's being dumbed down a bit. It's a bit easier to maneuver. All that kind of stuff. The chain chomps don't feel quite as threatening as they once did. The last lap where you change on the end, kind of fun. But it's not something I want to play on that much. It's not that interesting, if I'm honest. Theme-wise, yes, fair enough. But yeah, there are better DS tracks like Airship Fortress, Delfino Square that I would have rather have seen, to be honest. Alright, Merry Mountain. This is also a C tier track. Theming wise, very cool, nice looking level. The track itself, just not a lot going on. You just sort of drive up a hill, hit a jump, there's a big ski sort of thing, you jump up that, you come down the hill. I will say it's fun, it's a fun chaotic level, but there's not, apart from the theme, if you take the theme away, this is a very bland track and there's not a lot going on. And you can tell it's from Tour. It feels so much like from Tour, so because of that, it's going on there. It's like Peach Gardens, it's like one of those ones like, yeah, it's fun when it comes up, like once, but you never want to play it. Like you're not going, oh, I really fancy playing Merry Mountain. That's kind of what a lot of the C tier tracks are. They're fun to play on, but you don't go, oh, I really fancy playing on these. So that's kind of how I feel about it. 3DS Rainbow Road, easy S tier. All the Rainbow Roads, like, I like difficult tracks. I like it when we get the Rainbow Road like glow up. Like all of the Rainbow Roads look amazing. It's a ton of fun. I wish they were all in this game, honestly. But this is a point-to-point race like the N64 one. You start at one point, you drive around like the planets, you go down to the moon. The level looks fun, the music's decent, there's a lot of chaos here. Just a straight up really good level. I will say again, they have dumbified it, they have made it a bit easier, but it's still Rainbow Road, it's still on a harder side. Even though this one, I would say, is a bit on the easier side of Rainbow Roads. That might be debatable, but it's Rainbow Road. They're always usually really good tracks, so let's go in there. Amsterdam Drift, where did I put this? One of the better tour tracks because of the variety, and one of my favorite things about this is when you jump into the canal. You have the canal section on the third lap, you come out of the canal and you go back round, and then you're driving across people's paths. I think this track does enough to make it interesting. The music's kind of fun as well. This is one of the better tour tracks in design, in terms of variety, in terms of just having a fun track to play on. There's trams, there's tulips, there's moles, there's a bunch of stuff, and I think that alone makes this, because there's lots of variety going on, that makes it a lot of fun to play on. So that's where I'd put Amsterdam Drift. Riverside Park, it's also, for me personally, is like an A tier track. I like this level because I like the theme, I like how silly it is. It's not the most complicated level, and for some reason I'm really gelling with the Game Boy Advance levels. But honestly, like, I like it. I think it's fun. It's different. It's got a different vibe. I like the way you jump out the waterfall at the back. But because it is, I like seeing these Game Boy Advance levels turn from these flat tracks to something that's more, like, you know, that's changed over the years. I'm like, fair play. It's a nice change. Is it quite as good as Blue Lake? Snowland probably not, but I still really like it. So, DK Snowboard Cross, easy S tier. One of the best tracks in this pack. Great track in the Wii. Like, this is definitely over Maple Treeway for me, something like that. Like, this, the theme, going up the mountain, like, they're going down the bumps, going over the jumps, going through the half pipe. Oh, it's so good. I like the music on this level as well. Just a really, really good track, and I'm so happy to see this one back. I really like this game in the Wii one, and to getting to play it again here is great. So, Yoshi's Island. This is a hard one to score. I don't think people are going to like where I put this, but Yoshi's Island probably is B tier for me. Theming wise is S tier. Theme alone is incredible because it's based on a map screen basically of Yoshi's Island, and that's really cool. But when you break the track down, it's just a bit too short. You drive forward, you drive up and around, you jump into some water, you go for a quick castle, you fly into the clouds, and then down the other side. And I think it just needed to be a little bit longer or a bit more gimmicky to make it, like, it's definitely memorable. The music's fantastic, everything that's going on. It's one of the best original tracks to appear in this game. But it doesn't quite hit the highs of some of the other tracks. I know it's going to frustrate a lot of people, me putting that in B, because they're going to go, why have you put Mario Circuit 3, Snowland, Blue Lake, some of these other tracks there, and not this? But I just don't think it quite hits the highs of some of those other tracks, unfortunately. Theme-wise, probably the best in the past, but yeah. Bangkok Rush. This is probably, where did I have it? yeah, you know what? This is probably one of the other tour tracks that's actually really, really good. I do like the sort of mix-up of this. I think it's a lot of fun. I like the way that the final lap is very much like you go a completely different way. You're bouncing on the roofs of buildings. Lap 1 has you going through some like water, and there's like boats. There's like a bridge part. Like, this track is fairly interesting, and it's a bit on the harder side as well, which I like. You know, I just like at this point having the challenge of these tracks and learning these tracks, learning like the shortcuts and stuff, and then how chaotic can they be. And I think this track does a good job of balancing a mixture of like the laps feeling different locales, all that sort of stuff. I think it is a decent one. Mario Circuit is B. Yeah, I think it's B tier. I think it's good, and I like some of the uniqueness, but it's kind of short, which, you know, I know length shouldn't really apply because like Blue Lake and Snowland and stuff are quite short, but I think this one just doesn't. It feels a bit generic for a Mario Circuit, if I'm honest. Like, the fire piranha plants are really unique. I would have swapped this out for Double Dash's Mario Circuit. I think that level's a bit more fun. I don't hate it. I do like it. It's just it's kind of forgettable, and I think that's probably why it's in B. It's like, it comes up, you're like, oh yeah, cool. This has like its own sort of vibe going on, but I think it just works better as a track in the DS game versus what we've got here. But the fire piranhas are kind of unique, so that's why it's probably middle of the road-ish for that. So, alright, Waluigi Stadium, easy S tier. One of the best tracks from Double Dash. I love this track. Like, the dirt theming is amazing. The music is incredible. The only thing that's kind of like lets it down a little bit is that tunnel in the middle, like with the piranhas coming out sideways rather than just like making it. They opened it up a little bit again. 12 races, but it's still one of the best tracks. Theming and just playing on it. It's high intense. I love it. I think it's a really, really, really good track. One of the best. Singapore Speedway, again, like Bangkok Rush, because they came in the same pack. These are two of the most consistently decent tour tracks. I think they're a lot of fun. Singapore Speedway has a crazy visual style as you fly in through a shopping mall, through a stadium. It's interesting enough. It's pretty chaotic. Some of the laps are quite long in it as well. And I think they kind of combined that and Bangkok in that pack, and they were a lot of fun. And they are kind of like, for the longest time, we're probably like, hey, this is kind of the standard we want. I'm not expecting everything to be a Sydney sprint, because everyone's going to have their own tour track that they really like. But this was a nice bam. These are good tracks. These feel fun to play on. Unlike London and Berlin, which kind of blend into each other. Same with New York. Nice theme, but short. Paris is quite simple, and Tokyo Blur is really boring. So, like this one, A tier. Athens Dash. Well, I think this one was a B tier one for me. Visually, very cool. But, yeah, I just kind of don't think about it. I don't think about it. I'm not that bothered about playing on it. Like, I think when I play on it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. Music's a bit weird, but the track itself, you know, had, you know, the way you go around it and stuff, it is interesting enough, but it just doesn't, even though the theming is so different, and that alone should push it up, I just don't, it's not stuck in my head. Some of these tour tracks I play on, like Bangkok's and Singapore and Sydney, those tracks I play on them, I'm like, yes, these are very memorable. There's a lot of fun to be had here. They're very chaotic. Athens Dash is a good track. It just doesn't stick with me. It's not something I'm thinking about playing. I usually forget about it. It's like Berlin, it's like London, it's like New York. I'm like, oh yeah, these are tracks. They're fun to play on, but I'm not going out my way to pick them potentially. Daisy Cruiser. This unfortunately was a letdown. I loved Daisy Cruiser used to be a really difficult track. The section that had the chairs and the tables moving back and forth, that's back. But it's nowhere near as brutal as it once was. And they've widened some of the corners. The track itself feels very flat. It's probably a good way to describe it. I like it in nostalgia, but I don't think it's transferred over here. It's definitely one of the ones that's been dumbified, unfortunately. And I think that kind of sucks. I really would have preferred it to be you know, a lot more difficult, like the original, like that. But that's not what we got. We got a fun version of it, but not necessarily the best version of it, and that's why it's sitting in a B. Next up, we have Moonview Highway. This is it's a weird one. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's a cool track. It's one of the few tracks we got that was like a city track that was actually from the Wii games. Like, we didn't get Mushroom Bridge, we didn't get Mushroom City, but we got this. So in that side, I do like it. It just, again, doesn't feel quite as chaotic. I remember being kind of nuts in the Wii, and I might be misremembering, but we'll stick it in B. I think that's a good place for it. I do like this track. I think it's a nice looking track, but it just feels a little bit short. Doesn't feel like there's as many cars on the road, and that could be a placebo. That could just be me. I do like the fact that bob-ombs are there, and obviously things are meant to speed up when you're in the city, but I think we're going to go with that. I think that's a good placement for it. It does. I think if it was a bit more chaotic, I think I'd put this in A, but I think B is a good place for it. Alright, so squeaky clean sprint. I think this is probably A tier. I do have my gripes with it, but there is something incredibly fun and cool driving around a bathroom. It's almost like your miniature, you know, and I love stuff like that. I'd love to see like a living room level, a kitchen level, you know, levels based in the real world like in that, because I love that sort of stuff. I think the track is just a teeny tiny bit short, but there are so many cool things in here, like going down the plug hole, flying over the toilet. You've got the different places you can go. There's like tons of Nintendo references in this level. I think it's one of the better, like, quote-unquote new levels, which is basically a tour new level, but it's solid. I don't think it's quite S tier. I don't think it quite reaches those heights, but I think it is a very, very, very solid track. Los Angeles Laps is another D tier. It's one of the worst. The music's awful. The track's really boring. I don't like this track at all. I think this is a really, really just... Yeah, this is one of those tracks, along with like Tokyo. The D tracks, right, specifically, are the tracks where I'm just thinking there could have been like a GameCube track, there could have been a Game Boy Advance track, there could have been an N64 track, you know, a Wii track here, and we've wasted it on these. Anything that ends up in D tier is like wasted slot in my opinion. Like, these tracks just aren't, they just should not be in the game. But Los Angeles Laps, there's nothing interesting to say about it. It's boring. It's one of the worst tour tracks. And boring is the best way to describe it. It's got nothing going on for it. Alright, Sunset Wild. I know that upset a lot of people. I actually quite like it, but I do think it is B tier. I prefer Blue Lake, Snowland, and Riverside Park. But I do like Sunset Wilds. I'm not going to say like it's awful. I just don't think it's quite as... I don't know. There's something about it. Maybe it's knowing the fact that the track doesn't work like how it should do in the game, where it's meant to become a sunset. It just sort of stays pretty much the same time of day. I do like the music on it, and I do like the Shy Guys dancing around and stuff, and the oil and all that. It's an interesting choice, but yeah, I like it for what it is, but I can understand why people would be kind of annoyed with it. But for me personally, it's not quite there with the other Game Boy Advance tracks, but I still enjoy playing on it. Alright, Cooper Cape. Probably B tier. I'm so split on this track because there's bits of it, like the actual track design that I like, but the music I find really annoying. It's good in terms of how twisty it is, going down the water, going down the pipe. Like, it's quite memorable. Theming's very good, like the water park kind of motif going on. But yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel about it. I don't know how to explain it. I just don't think it's amazing, but I'm glad that it's here. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm like, oh yeah, this was a good Wii track, but here I just don't enjoy it like I used to. Maybe because there's better tracks or whatever Nintendo have done to it in this version. But it's, you know, I'm glad it's here. It's deserving of being in here, and it is a decent enough track. Alright, Vancouver Velocity. This is probably... Right, so here's what it comes down to. Do I think Vancouver is as good as or worse than Bangkok and Singapore? clever thing. I do like the Ice Stadium, but I don't think it's quite on the same level. I think it's almost there, but I don't think it's quite there. Because the other laps are pretty straightforward. It's fun going through like on the ice, and that's cool. But like the rest of it's nothing too special. I like playing on it, but I don't think it has the. It's one of those tour tracks that feels like very samey. It's probably the best way to describe it. Like Berlin and London, they're very samey. So that's probably why. Right, the new tracks. What have we got here? So let's put these in order. Before we do anything, we've got Rome Avanti. I had to get my own pictures for this. Then we have DK Mountain. Then we have Daisy Circuit. We have Piranha Plant Cove. Madrid Drive. Road to the Ice World. Bowser's Castle 3 SNES. And Wii Rainbow Road. Rome Avanti is a B track. It's actually fun, but a lot of it revolves around the same part of the track, and like you're constantly going around this one like roundabout, which is kind of a cool idea, but this is like every single like B tier tour track is basically, the problem is that they either blend into one, they're very samey, that sort of stuff. Like they're fun when they pop up, like they are more like Paris is very simple, so they're more fun than that. Tokyo's really boring. Los Angeles is really boring. Like really bland, boring tracks. These are better than that. But it's one of those things where you're like, you play on it, you go, that was fun. But it's not like an A or an S tier where you're like, I want to play on those right now again, kind of thing. You know, and I think that's what it is with B tier tracks. Is that simple thing of these are fun tracks to play on when they come up, but I'm not actively seeking them as much as the A or S tiers. Like I like all the levels that are in B tier. I like to play on. Like I want to make that clear. But the S and the A tiers are ones that I'm like, I want to play on that a lot. Whereas these are like, oh, this is fun. C tier, I'm like, I don't really care for, and D tier, I don't want to play on them. So you know. But I think that's where Rome Avanti sits. It's fun, but it's a little bit too samey in terms of how the track is designed. DK Mountain, I would love to put this in S tier, but this is a fantastic example of Nintendo simplifying a track that was hard. In Double Dash, this track is a tough track because when you get fired up the mountain, you've got all the bumps down the mountain. Here they've changed the first half to 3 jumps. Fine, okay, you don't have the bumpy bit, but I miss that being like completely bumpy and like trying to keep control of the car. That was the first part. Then you have like these big S-style turns. Well, now it's very difficult to fall off the track, where originally it was very easy to fall off the track. You do have the boulders still, but they don't feel like they're nearly as much of a threat. I'm glad they're still there, but they don't have the same placement. They don't fall down the same parts of the road. But because they've widened the road, a lot of that challenge is gone. The bridge itself is kind of cool at the end. It feels even more like crazy wavy. But its track should really be S tier, but those minor changes they've made have really brought down the difficulty, and that was what's fun about this track. It was a hard track, and you felt like an absolute boss when you nailed those turnings, and now it's kind of like, oh, that's easy enough. So it goes in A because nostalgia and theming, music's good, but I wished it was just, I wish I hadn't quite put the dampener on it. Daisy Circuit, this is probably C tier. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the track, but it's also like, I remember the track from the Wii game and there was bits of it, but it's not anything crazy to write home about. It's like, it's fun to play on once, let's move on. It's very much that kind of track. Like, it doesn't feel very Daisy-like anyway. It's just this random driving along like a pier, and then there's a big sort of roundabout, and then you have a couple of roundabouts, and then that's it. It's like, you know, it's okay. That's about all I can say about it. There's nothing special about this one. Daisy Cruiser is definitely a better track, even though that one feels dumbed down. But that has a bit more interesting theme than Daisy Circuit. So, Piranha Plant Cove, that's definitely A tier for me. I did not know what to expect from this when I played it, but good music, fun time of like nighttime. Lots of diving in and out of the water. Every lap feels incredibly different. Probably could use a few more obstacles in this level, but overall I think it's actually a really fun level. I think this was like, it's kind of like piratey vibe. almost. Like the music anyway gives that vibe to it. I think it's just, there's just, for a tour track, which is, you know, it might not say tour on it, but it is a tour track. It's actually quite well designed. Feels fun to play on. Very, like, lots of turns, lots of different directions. Like, honestly, just a really solid choice, and I can see myself playing on this quite a lot. Madrid Drive. This is an A tier track for sure. Mainly because, like, it just ended up being really fun and interesting. Every lap was interesting. You went to different places. You go like through the market, you go through a museum, you go into a football stadium. Like, this is kind of cool. The music actually sounds more Arabic than it does like Spanish guitar to me. But the music's kind of fun. And I just think as a tour track, I was like actually impressed. Like, that's the level of which tour track should be at. Obviously Sydney Sprint is my favorite, but like, you know, that one had the most interesting design and things going on with it. Like, all the tour tracks I've got in A, Madrid Drive is probably the best one. So Rosalina's Ice World, I think that is, it's difficult. I think I'm gonna put it in A. It's not the track I would have picked from the 3DS game, right? I'm glad it's here though, because that has some of the difficult turns that DK Mountain should have, and I think that's kind of fun. Yes, it looks very samey, but it's a tough track, and I've been asking for ages for the harder tracks to come over, and this one feels like it, which is good. And I really enjoy the mix-up that the track has, like going on top of the ice, through the water, the jumps on the sides of the turns, the hard turn with the massive hole in the middle. Like, there's just a lot here as a track. It's a difficult track, and I like that. Theme-wise is kind of a bit like, what's Rosalina got to do with ice? But there we go. But in terms of the track, it's really good. Right, Bowser's Castle 3 from the SNES. Of course it's going in S tier. Like, the only reason that this track itself is probably above Mario Circuit for me is because this one actually had a bit of a glow up. And also the music is super cool in this. Like, I forgot what the Bowser's Castle music was, so it's really cool to see that. But they've done some really interesting things with this. Like, I like the old classic Bowser Castle levels, and the fact that this has so much change to it, so much going on with it. I'm like, do you know what? This is just solid. And it shows that you can just have, it's all about track design, right? And it is just up there. It's like that track design is really solid. It's great. And I love it. And I'm glad that SNES tracks, in my opinion, the SNES tracks for the most part are some of the best. And then lastly, Wii Rainbow Road, obviously S tier as well. It's Rainbow Road. This track looks incredible. It's what I think it's one of the easier Rainbow Roads. I would have loved to have seen like Game Boy Advanced and GameCube make it in, as well as DS. I don't think that's in here. Like, I would have loved to have seen all the Rainbow Roads. But for what Wii Rainbow Road is, it's Rainbow Road. It's a more difficult track. It's a beautiful looking track. It's the fact that we got another Rainbow Road is awesome. Like, I'm really happy to see that. And I just like all the Rainbow Roads, to be honest. They're some of my favourite because they really try and put the races to the test, which is good. So that's kind of my tier list on the DLC tracks. For the most part, I think there are more good than there is bad. There's only 4 tracks in there that I think are absolute waste of time, a waste of space, and these are tracks I never want to play on. They're just not, like, Toad Circuit, boring. Tokyo Blur, boring. Sky High Sunday is just broken. It's a terrible track. It's badly designed. Los Angeles Labs is also very boring. Scrap those, replace them with 4 good tracks. I think we're golden, right? In terms of, like, consistency, I almost think some of the tracks in the base game that are returning tracks just are better. They got more love and care put into them rather than some of these being ported. But what we got overall from the new 48 tracks, I would say the stuff that's in S and A, absolutely worth it. Great fun. Love playing on those tracks. Stuff in B is decent. Maybe I'd swap stuff out. C and D definitely I'd swap out. C, I would probably swap those tracks out for other ones. But, you know, all in all, I've really enjoyed the Booster Pass stuff. I'm really enjoying playing it still. I'm still enjoying the new tracks that have just come out. And honestly, I hope that a lot of the tracks that were still missing, like Airship Fortress is one. I think Airship Fortress is one that should have probably been here. But like Airship Fortress, Delfino Square, GameCube Rainbow Road, Dino Jungle. There's quite a few tracks that could easily be in the next game, and I hope that they are. I hope that they do make it into Mario Kart 9 or 10 or whatever it ends up being called, and that we get to see a lot of those ones. That Banshee Boardwalk, Frappy Snowland. There's loads. There's so many. So, but yeah, there you go. There are my thoughts on it. If you disagree with me, feel free to say. If you think I'm being too harsh on something, also feel free to say. But yeah, it's going to do it for me today then, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. And until next video, I will see you then.